So this is your world.
That's right. A whole nother world. Beautiful, innit?
There aren't many games that are quite like Ni no Kuni. Even back in 2013, nobody thought it was possible for a game company to collaborate with one of the most prestigious animation studios of our time, Studio Ghibli. I think we all already know who these guys are, right? Spirited Away, My Neighbor Totoro, Howl's Moving Castle. These films have won numerous awards and are constantly talked about as the best things ever, all of which was helmed by Hayao Miyazaki. He hates video games and the iPad. With such history and prestige and hate, it's surprising to see a RPG that takes elements from Studio Ghibli's works and blends them together to create an experience much like their films. I had experience with Studio Ghibli's films in the past because I have sisters who absolutely adore their films. And coming into this game, the world, the characters, the art, and the music, it all felt like it was ripped straight out of a Ghibli film. But that was a long time ago, like a decade ago. It's been so long and I wanted to revisit the game again. I want to show you the things that make this game so amazing. I want to share with you the things that made this game into a miserable experience I never want to come back to, and hopefully shed some light on a game that is often overlooked and not talked about nearly as much as I wished it did. This is Ni no Kuni, one of the most unique games to ever be released. So how did this all start? Level 5 is a Japanese video game company known for series such as Professor Layton and Yokai Watch. And for their upcoming 10th anniversary, they wanted to create a special game to celebrate. At the time, Studio Ghibli had just finished working on Ponyo and there were no immediate projects for them to work on, so they had a lot of free time. Naoya Fujimaki, a musician who had worked with both companies, introduced Level 5 CEO / main guy behind the project, Akihiro Hino, to Studio Ghibli's own Toshio Suzuki. After discussing a potential collaboration, Suzuki agreed after seeing how passionate Hino was for the project. And because he didn't want Studio Ghibli to do nothing during this downtime, so it was like, hey, you got yourself a deal. This would mark Studio Ghibli's first video game project, and would become the game's key selling point. The team at Level 5 would work tirelessly to make sure that this game would feel like a Ghibli film. You can see this the moment you start the game. BAM! You're blasted with this symphonic orchestra playing as the game opens up with the credits, just like a movie. And then you're welcomed by one of Ghibli's very own animated cutscenes, introducing us to Motorville, a town inspired by ancient America. It's here where we meet Oliver, running to buy groceries. Man, I just love seeing animated cutscenes in the middle of games. You can see all the hallmarks that make their animation so iconic. Isn't it cute? But despite how welcoming the game is, it does begin in a rather tragic note. Oliver sneaks out to test a car built by his friend Phil, but due to some outside interference, it veers into the river, endangering Oliver's life. Fortunately, his mother rescues him, but not without the cost of her life. Overcome with grief, Oliver cries into the stuffed toy that his mother once gave him, which then transforms into a living, breathing whatever he is.
You just witnessed the rebirth of Drippy, Lord of the Fairies.
Who?
He then explains to Oliver that both of their worlds are connected, and that if Oliver wants to save his mother, he has to defeat the Dark Jinn Shadar. Now there's hope, and I'm hooked. This was truly a Ghibli film turned into a video game, and if you weren't convinced by it, how? The first few hours are generous enough to give you a bunch of Ghibli cutscenes to watch, all of which was wonderfully animated. And then you're plopped into this beautiful, breathtaking world, where you realize just how hard they worked at capturing the art style of Studio Ghibli. Ni no Kuni's art style is simply a treat to look at. Everything from the trees, the sky, and the ground looks as if it was painted over, bringing it to life with lighting, shading, and warm color tones that makes the whole area look so cozy. I can't help but feel warm inside just watching the world around me as I traverse this large landscape. The areas are crafted with detail. I almost feel bad for not stopping to appreciate them. But when you just take a step back and look, Wow. Golden Grove is actually insane. Occasionally, you're gonna run across these little creatures called familiars, which are basically the Pokemon of this game. And all of them have such charming designs that are just so, whoa. It's so simple, soft, and squishy. With those beady eyes and silly faces, you could quite literally turn any of them into a marketable plushie. Like, look at this guy. Isn't he so adorable? Hey, fuck you. For a game that's over a decade old, its art style is simply timeless. But another feature about Ni no Kuni that's timeless is the music. And that's because they cheated. Joe Hisashi composed this game's soundtrack. You know, the guy that's pretty much responsible for composing most of Ghibli's films, even back before Ghibli was even a thing. This guy is a major piece in making those films feel like what they are. So putting him here to compose the video game soundtrack, it was no doubt going to be amazing. The main theme touches my heart. Drippy's theme is hilarious. The battle themes are pretty unique compared to other RPGs, and yet they're still enjoyable to listen to in their own way. The moment that blew me away was when I first stepped into this world and heard the world theme for the first time. Although there are a few songs that I particularly didn't care about, and strangely some of them didn't loop properly, this is still a masterpiece of a soundtrack. You can tell that this game was a labor of love, both for what they were creating and for the respect they had for Ghibli's works. The towns and kingdoms you visit are nothing like the typical fantasy worlds. One kingdom is ruled by a talking cat, whose arch nemesis is a giant rat. Then you got an entire industrial nation that shifts on a dime, allowing for impromptu parades to happen at any moment. This information gives each area a face that you can recognize. There's an item called the Wizard's Companion, which essentially acts as your in-game wiki, and this thing is insane. It's packed full of information, familiar evolutions, item descriptions, alchemy recipes. You can even learn the in-game world's alphabet or read some of its fairy tales. Why would you go through the effort of including information like that if you didn't love what you were making? It's a testament to how far they went to fleshing this world out. And on some occasions, it has helped me despite having easy access to the internet. I still relied on the internet though. What's even crazier is the effort to localize this game. And a 352-page book. Apparently, Level 5 wanted to make sure that this game didn't feel foreign. They were working through the script, even retiming cutscenes so that they could fit better with the deliveries, giving characters distinct accents and ways of speaking that never came off as unnatural, and even bringing along child actors to voice some of these characters. There's a ton of puns and silly jokes that help bring out the personality of this world, and you'll even see some allusions to other films within the story arcs, names, and even designs of various characters. I don't have this one recorded, but one of the main characters, Swain, at the end of the game, literally says, word for word, "A castle in the sky." Cinema. If I were to just rate it all on this alone, this game would have been a 10 out of 10. And for the longest time it was. But one, I don't do ratings, and two, I just recently played this game. And unfortunately, this game wasn't as fun as I remembered. God damn, let me just walk through the sewers, please.
We can do this!
One of the unique things about Ni no Kuni is its combat system. It's this weird hybrid between turn-based and action, where most battles are fought using your familiars, using commands on the bottom left. It's pretty simple and straightforward. I don't really have much of a problem with... That's not true. I have a lot of problems with it. In the beginning, you only have Oliver in your party, and combat is in its most simplistic and boring. Beating a dog with a stick, yeah baby. Fortunately, that gets better over time as Oliver gains new familiars. But then the rest of the party joins in. They easily get swarmed, they run out of MP, they make the worst decisions possible. At times, you'll have to switch over to the characters just to save them from themselves. And it's hard to use anything other than the attack command because everything has a cooldown timer. Magic has a cooldown, skills have a cooldown, items have a cooldown. Items! Sometimes it's not even worth reviving my characters because I'm stuck running around waiting for the animation to finish before I can actually do something. I think the most satisfied I felt was mainly timing evasions, because defending and evading also have a set time period where they're active. I defended, you bitch! And the difficulty is all over the place. I've had some late game fights that were far easier than some of the earlier ones. I hate this boss. Am I Am I bad at this game? Level 5 wanted this game to appeal to both kids and adults alike, which you can see from the way they simplified the experience. Telling you where you need to go, showing you only 2 stats inside the equipment menus, and having Drippy spell things out for you. Shall I decode it for you, Ollie? Yes. I get why they did this. They wanted everybody to experience this game, even if it does feel like it's a bit handholdy at times. Which is funny, because this game is also incredibly tedious. What do you mean an MP recovery item costs 800 gold? Just for 10 MP? Everything is so expensive in this game, which sucks because money is also incredibly hard to come by. Even if you didn't want to buy items from the shops and just make them through alchemy, you'll be forced to use the mix and match option, which requires the exact amount every single time you want to make it. Good luck trying to make 99 sandwiches. And I have a big problem with how they handled the familiars. If I wanted a certain familiar, I have to beat it into submission and hope it likes me. And the capture mechanic is tied to one character specifically, Esther. Why? You expect me to rely on the one character that dies the most? You're crazy. Oh, that's awesome. These 2 restrictions kind of defeat the purpose of monster catching. I mean, the whole point is to collect these creatures and build your party how you want, but if you can't build your party how you want, then what's the point? Also, if the familiar you have happens to suck, changing them out for something else is kind of difficult because now you have to grind that one up just so they can be competent. And I say this from experience. I could not replace this guy. All of this was so annoying to deal with that I literally had to go to the game's casino just so I can exploit it. And yeah, look at that. Yes, I won. I love gambling. I'm actually a gambler. Maybe I got off on the wrong foot. I don't think the game is overall bad. It just has a bunch of annoying quirks that shouldn't exist. By the way, I had to walk all the way. What the? Play it on easy mode. The gameplay isn't the main appeal of this game anyways. It's the story. Ni no Kuni is a heartwarming story. It's wholesome and it will make you feel nice inside. Although what begins the story is tragic, most of the adventure is innocent and playful. Almost like a fairy tale, with each of the story arcs kind of feeling like an episode that's teaching a kid a moral of some kind. I like how unpredictable the story is, taking you in places that you wouldn't expect, yet it never lets go of its core themes of family, loved ones, and just being a good person. I also like how much of Oliver's growth can be seen within the story and the gameplay, how he begins as this crybaby bunting, as Drippy calls them, before finally maturing as a person. There's a lot to love about this story, but it's not written by Hayao Miyazaki, which I don't think should be a surprise. I kind of already mentioned that he's not a gamer. It's clearly beautiful in its own way, but it's kind of missing that touch. Not that I can 100% explain to you what that is. In a lot of ways, this game emulates that, but it's not to the same level. Plus, it's a video game. Its structure is more like Dragon Quest than anything else. And the kind of video game Miyazaki would have made is not this. It would not have been wholesome. Despite that, I still really like this story. However, I only really have one main problem, and it has to do with the ending. I'm about to spoil it real quick, so you have been warned. But the story should have ended after you defeated Shadar. The whole reason Oliver went on this journey in the first place was so that he could save his mother. But after all that trials and tribulations, he learns that his mother was the actual sage Alicia, and that she's really dead this time, that she cannot be saved. He almost gives up. That is until he realizes that his journey wasn't in vain, that everybody he's helped was worth it, and eventually confronts Shadar and defeats him. Even after learning that he is the guy that shares his soul. Everybody here gets their final moment to reconcile, Shadar, Alicia, Oliver, and it ends with one final Ghibli animation, showing Oliver reuniting with his mother one last time before she departs. It's so perfect. Then the ash fell.
Pitiful fools! My gift of mana will cleanse your tainted souls.
So, this is called Wrath of the White Witch, and the White Witch is the main villain responsible for everything. Yet, they pale in comparison to Shadar. She just doesn't have the same or Aura. She just doesn't have the same presence and connection that Shadar has with Oliver. And none of the council members do anything useful outside of just sitting there and yapping about how they're evil and mischievous. Ooh. It's just talk. And when you finally confront them, they just turn into a blob for a final boss. Wow, it just feels tacked on and it doesn't really add much to the story, especially since everything had already concluded with Oliver. Sure, P's backstory was tragic and Gallus was the only council member that was actually cool, but I just wasn't invested in any of them. But ignoring all of that, this is still an emotional experience with a heartfelt message about not letting tragedy consume you, remembering the love that our family and friends gave us, and growing up. I wish I could love Ni no Kuni like I did in the past, but I still respect the hell out of it. You can tell that this was a game made out of passion, not out of financial incentive. The first game still remains as an incredibly unique, one-of-a-kind experience. It truly is a Ghibli film that you can walk around in. And for that reason alone, there will never be another game like Ni no Kuni.